I'm joined now by my guest who will help us, break down the key findings of the World Bank in its Africa Polls report that was released recently. I'm joined now by Dr. Aliyu Ilyas, who is an economic analyst. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us on Business Daily this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Doctor, I will want to begin by hearing your thoughts. You have heard from social media commenters, and most of them rather seem to be pointing towards a certain direction, saying, that maybe the advice from the World Bank shouldn't be taken too seriously, and that we should focus on building a more localized economy. And some are saying that it was the World Bank's, advice to float the naira, and now the World Bank is saying, oh, the naira is one of the worst performing currencies in Africa, in comparison with other currencies such as the Kenyan shilling, which the World Bank also did say came out as the top performing currency. But looking at all of this, concerns from Nigerians, what are your thoughts?
All right, I think it's quite a challenging period, and it's coming clear that World Bank is behind our state of the economy, because they actually advise us to go ahead in a particular direction. They're also saying that that direction we are going is still the worst direction. So it's becoming surprising to see that. And I think at this point in time, we need to be more conscious of geoeconomics, whereby every region, every sector, every country look at their problems and profile some local solution as well. Because sometimes if you keep taking everything from World Bank, hook, line, and sinker, it's become a serious problem, like we are seeing now. You can also hear the projection they gave us that from the trajectory we are having now, before Nigeria can be okay, to take us 15 years, and that's quite alarming. And I can agree with you. I can tell you that I think that's not correct in economies, because if you do what you're supposed to do, at least 2-3 years, you see an outcome of your good policy.
You have spoken to, these reports that we get from the World Bank and sometimes from the IMF. We see the Article 4 consultation report, being released by the IMF from quarter to quarter, and the Africa Polls report from the World Bank, giving projections, outlook, and calling out figures, really reeling out numbers. But you have said that maybe we shouldn't be taking these projections hook, line, and sinker, and should focus more on building a more localized economy. What, in your opinion, are the major steps or the low-hanging fruit steps that Nigeria should take towards building that?
Right. Our major problem now, if you ask me, is a forex problem, because we have a supply side problem for forex. Because if we get more forex, I think that would have helped the naira, and naira would have appreciated more, and will not be compared to bill or South Sudan pounds at that level, a war-ravaging country, comparing Nigerian currency to that country. So I think we need to look at how we can really do that. And I can see a lot of about 26 policy that this CBN governor have tried to work on, stopping BTA, PTA, reducing BDC. A lot of things have been put in place, but we can see it's not yielding results. Because we are doing it in World Bank, or let me say Bretton Woods institution way. We must start looking at it in a local way. And you also see the same World Bank, they will project that Africa is going to grow 3.3, and now sub-Saharan Africa is going to grow 3.3. Now they are now saying no, it may not be possible. The same people who projected that Nigeria also will grow at a particular level and now say no, it's not possible again. You can see it's quite sometimes back and forth even on their part. That shows that they don't have the crystal ball themselves. They are trying to just project. So it's about projection. So I think it's a projection. We must do the hard work and making sure our economy are working in Nigeria.
We will still be looking at some specifics from that report, especially in the area of, GDP growth projections for Nigeria, growth projections for Africa, and of course, projections regarding the effects of the increase in Nigeria's interest rate, and more after the break. And my guest, who is Dr. Aliyu Ilyas, is still with me. We'll be back after the break to stay. And you are still watching Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust TV. And just before the break, we started our conversation proper, and we are looking at key findings from the recently released World Bank Africa Polls report. And if you can have, details of the key findings from that report displayed on the screen. And part of those findings is that the Naira has depreciated by approximately 43% year to date, making it one of the worst performing currencies, along with the Ethiopian birr and the South Sudanese pound, and that Nigeria's gross domestic product will grow by 3.3% in the year 2024, and that Nigeria's GDP is expected to accelerate slightly to 3.6% during the 2025 to 2026 removal of fuel subsidies, or 2026, then removal of fuel subsidies in mid-2023 led to a sharp rise in gasoline prices by an additional 40 to 45% in September of 2024. And those are just a few of some of the many, indicators or indications that Nigeria should look at according to the World Bank. But I have my guest still right here with me on the program in the person of Dr. Aliyu Ilyas. He is an economic analyst. Thank you again, Doctor, for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me once again.
Okay. I will want for us to continue by, some of the projections by the World Bank, starting off with the GDP growth projection for Nigeria. The World Bank has, of course, stated a 3.3% growth for 2024, and saying that this is slightly higher than what we should expect for the years 2025 and 2026. But I will want to hear from you, looking at this projection and past projections in the past. We have seen times where the World Bank will give a certain projection and then would tweak it with time. But is this projection in particular realistic, looking at the current economic indicators?
Right. Looking at current economic indicators, honestly, the projection, we have to look at it with cautious optimism, because if you look at Nigeria economy as it is now, most businesses are handicapped in terms of energy costs, and in terms of forex, and in terms of even going to bank to borrow. And these are the...
We seem to have lost Dr. Aliyu Ilyas there, but while we try to have him rejoin us on the program, we are speaking about the recently released Africa Polls report by the World Bank. Part of the findings from that report, according to the World Bank, is that the Naira has depreciated by approximately 43% year to date. That is the start of the year till today, making it one of the worst performing currencies, along with the Ethiopian birr and the South Sudanese pound. I'll just point out that the World Bank also did say that the Kenyan shillings emerged as the best performing currency across the sub-Saharan African region. And the report also did say that Nigeria's gross domestic product, that is Nigeria's GDP, will grow by 3.3% in the year 2024. And some have been, most economic watchers and economic analysts are, trying to decipher whether that is, realistic, considering the current economic indicators, from inflation to current GDP numbers that we've gotten per quarter, to trade and our capital importation, to unemployment and these other major economic indicators. He also did, the World Bank rather also did say that Nigeria's GDP is expected to accelerate slightly by 3.6% during 2025 to 2026. And that the removal of fuel subsidies by mid of 2023, that is, you will recall that did happen on the 27th of May 2023, that has impacted on energy prices and has also impacted on inflationary pressures. But while we try to have him rejoin us, I'll just point out that I'll just point out that there are concerns, especially from social media users, like we had pointed out earlier, regarding, the submissions by the World Bank and most Bretton Woods institutions, the World Bank and the IMF and the likes. But I believe we have our guest back with us on the program. Dr. Aliyu Ilyas is back with us, I believe. Oh yeah, we do have him here with us again. Doctor, you were speaking regarding the projections and how realistic these projections are.
Right. The projection is to be taken with cautious optimism, because most indicators are presently is just negative. Because if you look at the manufacturing sector, or let's look at MSME, or let's look at the production sector, is that they do not have the strength to actually produce at the maximum level. In fact, most capacity are not well utilized. So, and it is the summation of all this productivity that we're going to use to, get our GDP. If you look at the energy security, the cost of PMS is very, very high. The cost of electricity is very, very high. You also look at forex. You cannot dare to import things, because if you look at even the tariff at the port authority is not actually helping. And if you look at forex, it's also not helping. So all the indicators is quite negative as it were now. So I think we have to hold that their projection with cautious optimism. I'm not sure we can achieve that 3.3 projection as stipulated by the World Bank.
And regarding our currency and how the Naira is faring, in comparison with other local currencies or currencies across the sub-Saharan African region, we have, stated countless times already that the World Bank did say that the Nigerian Naira is among one of the worst performing currencies. But what the World Bank also did highlight is that this is happening due to the surging demand for the dollar. And what that brings to mind again is the concept of the dollarization of the Nigerian economy. And we have, heard the CBN continually, say that part of its concerns has been that. But let's hear from you. We have seen reforms come from the CBN, but is that enough to address concerns such as the dollarization of the Nigerian economy?
Right. It is clear that the Nigerian economy is being dollarized, because everything is being tied to dollar. If you want to purchase anything, you have to consider the rate of dollar. Dollar is now 1,700 in the parallel markets, and that is a factor that determines everything a businessman wants to do in Nigeria. Even if you want to pay anything, it has to be pegged alongside. And like I always said, we have supply side problem. So government needs to do more, because if you look at, since the Naira has been floated, where you have willing buyer, willing seller, it has become so difficult for Nigerians, and it has devalued our money to the level at which we have never seen before. Imagine we are being compared to a bill of Ethiopia and pounds of South Sudan. That shows the level that we are at the ebb of the value of Naira. And I think we should hold the federal government and the CBN led by Yemi Cardoso responsible for this, because of the policy direction. You cannot remove first subsidy, float the Naira, and also making sure that you are not also helping the business entity to go bank to borrow because of the level of interest rate. So it is a serious problem that we need to rethink very well. Recall that we are not only suffering the forex problem, it has also translates to the cost of energy. That is the mainstay of any productive entity in Nigeria. So I think it's a challenge that we need to solve as soon as possible if we want to really get out of this challenging economy.
That is indeed a serious challenge, like you rightly stated, and has become quite concerning, especially how it is impacting on trade and on MSME's performances here in Nigeria. But I will want for us to speak regarding the best performing currencies. The World Bank did point out that the Kenyan shilling and the South African rand, are showing signs of recovery. And if you look at this pattern, these are countries that make one of the top GDP countries, with the major GDPs as far as the sub-Saharan African region is concerned. And Nigeria indeed belongs on that list. But on this other list, we see that the Naira is not performing as well as we expect for it to. But what can we, take or replicate from countries such as South Africa or Kenya, that have helped in strengthening their local currencies?
Right. I think it's just their policy direction. Policy direction is key. You recall not quite long, the Kenyan citizen actually protest against William Ruto because of his policy direction, and he actually reversed. That shows that even against the expectation of the Western and Bretton Woods institution, he actually reversed some things. So it is when we decide to actually look at local challenges and and profile solution. You also look at South Africa. South Africa belongs to a bloc, the BRICS. The BRICS actually help South Africa a lot. When you need fund, when you need business partner, economic partner. But for we just want to rely on the Bretton Woods institutions until we look at a better way of looking at our currency. You look at China yuan. Most Nigerians trade with China now, and I can tell you, as at this level now, the most country that we traded with currently is China. So what is making us to still use dollar to buy items from China? Why not use Chinese currency and Nigerian currency? That would have reduced pressure on dollar. The supply side would have reduced and give rise to another alternative currency. These are the things we must start to look at. If we continue to depend on dollar every now and then, I think we'll continue to see this problem. So we must find a way to deal with other currency, especially the Chinese currency, because they are major trade partner. Then we must also now work on our banking sector. Having a look at what Cardoso tried to do by reducing the BDC and whatever, it shows it does not make any headway. Even also look at what it did to cryptocurrency, believing that they are behind the hike in the value of dollar. It's still the same. I think we need to do more to really tame this ongoing problem. But the major problem we must look at is that forex. We must make sure we help the supply side to make sure things get better. At the point we are even thinking is because we are owing airlines like Emirates, among others, now we have paid significantly. It's still not coming down. That shows that we must rethink our demand. We have also decided to buy crude oil from Dangote in Naira. That is another factor. Now Dangote is now supplying us. We are reducing the level at which we demand for, because Dangote, importation of fuel take about 40% of our forex. But now that it's local, we must ramp up things and make sure that it actually works so that we will not erode this benefit. So maybe going forward, by the time Dangote is stabilized, we think maybe the value will still have Naira value will start to appreciate, as it were.
We remain optimistic regarding that and, hope that indeed, like you rightly stated, the Naira would start to appreciate in the short to medium term. But away from discussions on the Naira, another very interesting point that the World Bank did state was that we should, expect to see further hike in interest rate in the coming months or in the coming MPC meetings. And, we have seen so far about 850 basis point increase just in the year 2024 alone, with the interest rate currently standing at 27.25%. And, most people would say that is already too high for, businesses to stay afloat, considering the current business climate. But here we have the World Bank saying that maybe we should expect further increase. But let's hear from you. What are your thoughts on this projection regarding interest rate hike?
But for me, I think the best things for the CBN governor alongside his team during the MPC upcoming meeting to tarry, to just stay put without increasing, because to increase the interest rate, which shows that they are not sensitive matters of taste. That means they are not really in tandem with the state of the economy. So for me, I think they should ignore what the World Bank is saying. They should tarry, they should hold on and see how, over time, their policy direction on reduction of inflation will work. You cannot continue using the same thing. For the past 1 year now, we have seen about 850 basis point increment of interest rate, and it does not yield any result. Recall, even the marginal decrease in inflation that we saw in July and August is a function of our produce, which is seasonal in nature. So I think they should tarry and hold on. That means they are not understand. They don't have good understanding of.
But you have asked for the CBN to pause and watch. When you say pause, how long would you ask for the CBN to watch before either increasing or decreasing the MPR?
Right. They can just do this and wait until next MPC. The next MPC we must have seen two significant reports, maybe from Nigeria, the NBC, what NBS, Nigeria Bureau of Statistics would have given us, so that would have seen how effective those things are. Because the more you keep increasing, the more people running from this Nigeria GDP continue to low. You can even see the contradiction for World Bank now. World Bank is projecting that Nigeria will have 3.3 increments in GDP. And the same is also saying that they should continue to increase the interest rate. So if you increase the interest rate, business entity will want to shut down. And I can tell you a lot of companies have shut down because of these interest rate increments, because of the forex challenges, and because of energy security. It's a serious issue that they need to tarry at this point in time.
I would like for us to touch on inflation. We did see recent inflation data released by the NBS for the month of September that goes to show that Nigeria's inflation currently stands at 32.7%. But looking at the World Bank report, the World Bank did say that it wasn't, particular to just Nigeria, as we have countries such as Ethiopia and Ghana also experiencing, inflationary pressures. But looking at that now, and the World Bank is saying that we should expect some easing maybe at the beginning of 2025. Do you agree with that submission from the World Bank? Seeing again the current economic indicators.
Well, I recall I discussed this in your studio the other time, that the reduction we saw the last time was a function of farm new produce, which is seasonal. And I also said that with the increment we have just seen in the cost of PMS, there is going to be increase in inflation. So I think we have not solved the major structural problem. And what are the structural problems? We agree that two things is pushing this inflation. It is the cost of PMS that is pushing it more, and also the forex, and also the challenge of insecurity. These are legacy problems that we can actually see about ourselves. Until we solve this major problem, I don't think we will have a way out of this challenging inflation. And like I said, we should stop applying hawkish approach where you are sacrificing the growth to reduce inflation. It is when you allow growth, sometimes it will, in the long run, bring about a reduction in inflation. So I think we must solve the major problem. Government said refinery will work. We've not seen it work. Government said CNG will be available at like a brick and mortar. We have not also seen it. So it's that is the challenging thing. So I don't think inflation is likely to come down from the look of things. But the approach that the World Bank is giving is not the best for Nigerian economy.
But I will want to hear your projection, your GDP projection for the full year now, the 2024 annual year for Nigeria. What are your thoughts? The World Bank is saying 3.3% GDP growth, but what would you say, is more realistic?
Well, I look at GDP because of the challenges of inflation, challenges of forex, challenges of fuel price hike. So I am thinking we will hover around 3.1% because of the state of the economy. It will be difficult for us to achieve that 3.3 because I would know about 3.6 for 2025, but this 2024 is quite, I think I would like to stand with 3.1% GDP.
And we could reel out all the numbers, we could, call out all the data, but what the average Nigerian is more concerned about is how this, does impact their state of livelihood and their pockets, basically. But I will want for you to speak regarding that now. What immediate policy actions we should be taking from the monetary side of government to the fiscal side of government to alleviate, Nigerians that are currently grappling with the current economic challenges?
Right. I think on the fiscal side, I would like to encourage the National Assembly and President to speed up the executive bill on the new tax reform. I think that will have some level of impact, especially the one that say that if you are doing business less than 25 million naira, you could be excluded from some, is it from VAT? Then also, if you are a salary earner of 70,000 naira, you can get tax itself. I think these are, and also ultimately that if you are any more than 100 million, you'll be paying tax of 25% if the our elites will comply. I think that's a very good one on the fiscal side. The only challenge we have on fiscal side is the issue of custom tariff. I think that as well, and I think the challenge of forex is also affecting that. But in terms of monetary side, to study of MP really mean a lot. Then also that forex, they should do more ability of the forex supply to different windows that you can approach. Then willing has never helped, and I think we should review that areas.
Dr. Ali Ilyas, who is an economic analyst, speaking to recent report released by the World Bank, that is the Africa Pulse report. Thank you, Doctor, for all the insights you've shared with us on the program today. And just before we go, I will just like to again look at the key findings from that report as released by the World Bank, the Africa Pulse report, major findings, talking about GDP projections and the likes. If you can have that displayed, where the World Bank is saying that Nigeria is expected to record about 3.3% GDP growth for the year 2024. The World Bank also is saying that the Naira emerged as one of the worst performing currencies in Africa, depreciating by 43% from the start of the year to date, that is today's date, along with the Ethiopian birr and the South Sudanese pound, and that the GDP is expected to accelerate slightly by 3.6% between the years 2025 and 2026, and the removal of fuel subsidies in mid-2023 led to a sharp rise in gasoline prices by an additional 40 to 45% in the month of September 2024. But that's all we will be taking today on the program, but keep the conversation going across all our social media platforms on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, and of course on X. And we will be there to, respond to your questions and respond to your comments. My name is Chiamaka Inendu. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.